Welcome to my humble abode, darlings. Come in out of the rain and get comfortable. I have a story to tell you, and I hope you enjoy. If you do, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Uncivilized, Captain Nemo and the Legend of Dwarka. Chapter 4. Over the course of the following days, Grace hardly saw Captain Nemo at all. When the captain wasn't locked away in his room, his focus was entirely fixated on his duties and the maintenance of his vessel. Meanwhile, the crewmen seemed somewhat apprehensive, perhaps avoidant of the newcomer. Grace's primary interactions during that first week were almost exclusively with Mastani, Tasia, and Lieutenant Ndaye. The captain's sister did the cooking aboard the vessel, making interactions with the dignified, middle-aged woman somewhat inevitable. One day, Grace sought Mastani in the galley, hoping for some conversation. She found her cooking over the stove and cleared her throat. Pardon, Mastani Rajkumari? Mastani started and turned around quickly. Oh, I beg your pardon, Mastani Majkuri. I just came to, talk. The older woman shook her head and went back to her cooking. Please do not call me Rajkumari. I'm not a princess anymore. I beg your pardon. How would you prefer me to address you? Mastani is fine. Grace blushed slightly. She was accustomed to the strict Indian formality of title usage, and calling Mastani by her given name made Grace somewhat uncomfortable. Oh, well, you may call me Grace as well. Very well, Grace. Mastani turned and set a plate of lightly grilled white blobs in front of the doctor. You're a very lean girl. You should eat more. Oh, what is this? Grace asked, staring at the plate. I learned how to make it from our late doctor, Haru Satu. He was from Japan, and he called it Shirako. But what is it? The sperm sac of blowfish. Oh, I've never had this before. She smiled uneasily, then picked up one of the whitish blobs with great hesitation. She took a deep breath and then popped it in her mouth. In a moment, her expression relaxed. I don't know how to I described this to someone, but I quite like it. You actually ate it? A smile spread across Mastani's face. I did not really expect you to, but now I see you will be able to palate whatever provisions we serve. Well, I'm glad I passed your trial, Grace laughed, then took another bite. It vaguely reminds me of paneer, but fishy. Paneer. I can't say that there's much resemblance, but I do prepare it with many of the same ingredients as I would paneer. Where do you get the seasonings? Some seasonings are flora harvested from the ocean, but Tasia and I maintain a little hydroponic garden in our room where we grow spices. Does she help you cook as well? Occasionally, but mostly it's just me. Dr. Sato used to be the head cook on the Nautilus as well as physician, and I merely did what he told me to. A few years back, the poor man sustained a fatal head injury, and I took over his responsibilities in the galley. She let out a tired sigh. We all must contribute to the crew, you know, and seeing as I did not get the education my brother did, I contribute by doing the work women would normally do in my homeland, such as cooking and sewing rather than participating in scientific endeavors. Grace took another bite of the food. Cooking is a science, Mastani. You might not have received Captain Nemo's education, but you surely must be of a scientific inclination as well to make something delicious out of, cod pieces, if you will. Mastani smiled and returned to her cooking, leaving Grace feeling encouraged by the interaction. She hoped Mastani would warm up to her in the same manner her daughter had done so quickly. Tasia frequently flounced into Grace's quarters to show her some new gadget she was designing, or the blueprint of future ideas, which provided Dr. Evans with a sense of companionship. Grace asked her one day, "I take it your uncle taught you engineering?" Tasia nodded. "Yes, I was 10 years old when my father passed away. Uncle whisked us away to this place after that happened. Though I was a grieving child, Uncle tried to provide me with distractions by teaching me how to use a riveter. Under his supervision, I pieced together some of the less crucial interior parts of the Nautilus. That was when I learned to love tools and the science of engineering. It was my escape." Grace smiled. "Well, I would appreciate any tutelage you might be willing to offer me. Presently, I'm drowning in information, but please don't tell your uncle I said that." "Okay, if you'll teach me about the science of medicine in return. It would be a shame if you died like our previous doctor and we were left without a medical professional once again. I can be your spare." Tasia covered her mouth and suddenly realized that an outsider might not understand her darkly facetious sense of humor. But to her utter delight, the doctor laughed heartily. Several days later, when Grace had finally finished reading the books Captain Nemo had assigned her, she sought out Lieutenant Nadaye. "What shall I do now, Lieutenant?" Kaladu adjusted his glasses. "Well, I suppose a good place to start would be to show you what to do in an emergency situations. Come with me, Doctor." As she followed him to the armory, Grace began venting her frustration. Where is Captain Nemo? I would think a captain would want to be more personally involved in the training of his crew. "He trained all of us intensively, Doctor." The lieutenant smiled slightly. "But he also handpicked us and desired our presence. You merely boarded our vessel like some sort of pirate." "Me? A pirate? I'm a humanitarian." "That's what your people always say, isn't it?" He chuckled. "English missionaries came proclaiming Christ across the Indus Valley to a populace who were disciplined by St. Thomas himself half a millennium before the British barbarians eschewed paganism. They were living in lice-ridden mud huts, while the citizens of Mohenjo-Daro enjoyed indoor plumbing." She looked at him with surprise, then laughed. "Well, when you put it that way. But do not misunderstand me, Doctor. I understand that you must have hoped to converse more with the captain. You're going to have to win his trust first, and that, I'm afraid, is no easy feat." In the armory, he handed her a canister with a hose attached to it. "Now, let's go over what you've read about fire safety. There's no need to elaborate on how disastrous a fire on board would be. Do you know how to use the extinguisher?" Taking the end of the hose, she said confidently, "Yes, all I do is—" Grace's words were cut off as she blasted herself in the face with pressurized fire retardant, causing her spectacles to fly off her face. The lieutenant rushed to help her. "Oh, Doctor, are you all right?" Sputtering and wiping the liquid from her face, she stumbled forward and heard something crunch under her feet. "Oh, no," Grace groaned, picking up her broken spectacles. Kaladu smiled reassuringly. He took the shattered eyewear and handed her a handkerchief to wipe her face. "Come with me, Dr. Evans." The lieutenant led her into the storeroom and gestured to a set of small table tools sitting against one wall. From a metal box, he brought out a crystal which had been polished into a round, flat shape as clear as glass. Putting on some goggles, he instructed, "Cover your ears, Doctor." She did so, and Caladu carefully began slicing the crystal with a thin electric saw, coated with oils and diamond dust. When he had finished, he said, "Now, all that's left is to be done is polish these lenses and fit them into frames." Picking up some pieces of wire and pliers, he sat down at a table and began to shape new glasses frames for her. Grace sat down across from him and watched with great interest. "My goodness, Lieutenant, I cannot thank you enough." She sighed and looked down at her hands. "If I continue to make such idiotic blunders, I'm certain that I'll never get to see the captain's good graces." "Don't worry about it, Dr. Evans. These things take time. And as for his reclusivity, don't take it too personal. Both of our fathers sent us to Europe together when we were children. We boarded at most of the same schools and universities, so I can attest that he always shut himself away at times. When something grabs his focus, it consumes him, body and soul." When Caladu had finished making Grace a new pair of spectacles, he walked the doctor back to the drawing room. "Thank you again, Lieutenant, for going through the trouble of making me a new pair of spectacles." "It's the least I can do for the woman who saved the life of our dear Tasia. I would also have stayed with her during her convalescence, but I am not immune to scarlet fever, and the captain needed me at his side. That's why I'm so grateful to you for saving her life." "It's merely my vocation, Lieutenant." She looked out upon the porthole and then exclaimed, "Upon my word! Oh, Lieutenant, what is that behemoth?" He joined her at the porthole, where her wide eyes were glued to a fish of enormous size. "Is that the fish which swallowed Jonah?" Caladu chuckled. "That, Doctor, is Rhinocodon typus, the whale shark. The reason for its name is self-evident, isn't it? It is the largest fish alive, but despite its mass, if it was to swallow a man, it would spit him out immediately, due to the relatively small size of its esophagus. And would you believe it's a filter feeder, like the peaceful baleen whale?" Grace stood transfixed as the whale shark swam by. Remoras stuck to its side, catching a ride on their giant neighbor as their small mouths nibbled on the parasites living on the whale shark's bespeckled skin. The blue vastness of the Arabian Sea was all that was visible around the submerged Nautilus, and made a striking backdrop for the magnificent beast. It opened its carnivorous mouth wide, filtering gallons of water through its gill rankers to sieve the ocean for plankton. Grace had difficulty believing Caladu's assurance that it couldn't swallow her whole. "The ocean utterly terrifies me, Lieutenant. A cold chill seems to grip me when I look out of the porthole, and yet I cannot tear myself away." Caladu smiled wryly. "I believe Professor Anorax expressed those same feelings about our captain." Grace laughed. "I cannot blame him for that, considering the circumstances he was in. But as for myself, I choose to believe the captain is a mere mortal, same as you and I." "But you should be mindful, he's also prone to bouts of melancholy, and during those times craves isolation. I would not disturb him then. In order to live on the Nautilus, I would strongly counsel you to remember that all of us on this ship are passionate individuals, Doctor, and quite uncivilized. This crew and its commander had been molded by hard times. I'm afraid a nice, well-brought-up English lady such as yourself cannot imagine what war does to a man." "Can't I?" she whispered under her breath, and rubbed her left shoulder, feeling an old twinge of pain. Out loud she said, "Thank you, Lieutenant, for your counsel. I shall keep it in mind when I interact with Captain Nemo in the future." After parting with Caladu, Grace returned to her quarters and found a note on her desk. Dr. Evans, the room adjacent to the crew's quarters, has been cleared and my chemistry tools have been set up for your disposal. I trust you shall arrange it into an acceptable medical bay. You may begin writing medical records for my crew today, starting with my sister, who will join you presently. N. She set about finding the room, which was to be her new laboratory and medical bay. It was a small, sterile space containing a cabinet, chair, cot, and medical table. The table was laid out with all manner of state-of-the-art chemistry equipment. When Grace opened the cabinet, she found antiseptics and quinine, as well as a glass box on the top shelf which contained standard first aid supplies, such as bandages, towels, and sterile sponges. The box was illuminated by a glowing bluish-violet bulb with the name Finson printed on it. What caught her attention most was an array of bottles and jars containing biological specimens neatly arranged. Each was labeled with a code in addition to its scientific name and the location where it was salvaged. A book was placed at the forefront, next to a jar labeled Dracania cinnabari socotra. Dragon's blood tree resin? Well, that's rather thoughtful of him, Grace conceded with a smile, as she looked at the bright red substance. The book was a catalogue of the jars listing their apparent prosperities, compared with widely known drugs and compounds. Grace was delighted at the prospect of delving into the captain's findings and adding more of her own. Rifling through the cabinet, she also came across bottles of sulfuric drugs. For anesthetic or sedation, she observed. The use of these substances can range from aiding surgery to subduing insubordinate individuals. A tool for mercy or for treachery, like so many things in life. A soft knock at the door of the medibay signaled the presence of the captain's sister. "Hello, Mastani," Grace beckoned her into the room. "Please have a seat." The middle-aged lady sat down gracefully and said, "Bayat said you are to give each member of the crew physical examinations and write medical records of them, starting with me." "Yes, he left me a note saying as much." The doctor picked up a pen and paper and began taking notes. "Tell me, Mastani, in what year were you born?" 1825. "And what is your occupation?" Mastani smiled self-consciously. "As I said before, I just cook, and I sew, and I make uniforms." Grace jotted down the information, commenting, "You know, before I met Tasia, I did not realize there were women on the Nautilus. Oh, it's just me and my daughter. My husband died fighting alongside Dakar, Captain Nemo, in the revolt against the British in 1857. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. The captain never speaks of it. He built the Nautilus in secret to flee the pain he experienced at the hands of mankind, as well as to avenge the death of his family." Grace felt tears spring to her eyes as her own painful memories threatened to make themselves known. She cleared her throat. "You don't have to speak of the rebellion if it's too painful, Mastani." She shook her head. "Truthfully, I have not had another woman to confide in it. Well, for years. I am no warrior, nor am I an intellectual, nor am I an engineer. Sometimes I feel that no one takes me seriously, except perhaps Caladu." She smiled. "Caladu's father was a Senegalese merchant from the city of Dakar, and was a good friend of our father's. Such a good friend, in fact, that when it was suggested by a priest my brother be named Thakar to honor a clan of warriors loyal to our family, our father altered the pronunciation to pay tribute to Caledou's family origins as well. Grace chuckled. It would seem no one in your family ever heeds tradition. Is Arjuna Thakar related to the warrior clan you mentioned? Yes, poor Arjuna's father was another casualty of the war. His mother and I are the only ones alive today, thanks to my brother, you know. There are those who would see us dead without our husbands. Grace frowned. She had heard of the practice of widows committing suicide on their husband's funeral pyre. Are you referring to sati? Sati, yes. Since traditional Indian widows could not remarry, and most would not have means to support themselves, it seemed to some that a better option would be to end their own lives. Better death by fire than death by starvation, or being victimized by lecherous men. But why can't widows remarry? Oh, nowadays they may, legally speaking, but most widows still do not remarry, considering marriage to be a once-in-a-lifetime occurrence. So much the worse for those who find themselves yearning for companionship. She looked pensive, but in any case, my brother would not see me waste away with my daughter, which is why he brought us aboard the Nautilus after the death of my husband. We are all the remnants he has of his family. If you are all that remains of your lineage, then is Bundelkhand under the rule of the British Raj alone? I thought it currently had a king. Mastani's face reddened, and the doctor feared she'd asked a question which was better left unspoken. However, Nemo's sister answered hesitatingly. The throne of Bundelkhand is currently occupied by our cousin Amal, under the authority of the British Raj. Oh, but we do not speak of Amal, and I would ask you not to bring up the subject to my brother. Very well, Mastani, Grace proceeded to take her vitals. Do you mind if I ask you when you last menstruated? Oh, Grace, it's not proper to speak of such things. I meant no offense. It's merely a routine medical question. I haven't taken note. I shall do so in the future. After she left, Grace pondered Mastani's discomfort at being questioned about her menstruation cycle. She supposed that Mastani, being a proper Indian lady with no female company for so many years, had led to her self-conscious demeanor. Still, something about her manner concerned Grace. She's about the age for menopause, the doctor noted. I will keep a watchful eye on her. So quoth this raven. Sorry for missing last week, my darlings. Crazy week. Please, if you get a chance, look in the description and go buy this book. It is so good. Anna is an amazing writer and so fun. And if you liked my narration of it, please give me a thumbs up. Give me a shout out. Hello. If you want out a shout out back, I'm willing to give it. Definitely. Just ask and recommend it to all your friends. And by all means, have a lovely week. Bye-bye. What? You're still here after the whole story? I really appreciate that, darlings. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. And I always love to hear from you. Have a glorious day, my darlings.